It is TAW Live. I am Neil Atkinson. I've got Mike Bankole. I've got Dan Morgan. I've got Steve Evans all in front of me here. If you're worried about my pallor, if you're worried about the way in which I look, I am in the Flamingo room. From there, you can see that is what the wallpaper is opposite me, and it is absolutely bouncing all over my face. If you're listening to this as a podcast, well, firstly, you're fortunate you're not having to see the flamingos bounce on my face. But also, you're going to get Gary Judge talking about the Blues coming up in a minute or two, and Mel Lawley and Missy Bo Kearns talking to Harriet Pryor about the big game coming up at the weekend for Liverpool women. But before then, we will chat about the press conferences, because they are now plural these days, given everything that's going on. And we will work in part 4 to talk about the Merseyside derby as well. But I want to start off with the concept of the press conferences. And Dan Morgan, it seems to me as though the Manchester City manager is back on his tightrope of looking a bit of a divvy if he isn't too careful in the long run. But I actually feel a little bit sorry for him, because he's the fella who has to be put up to speak about this stuff all the time. And we're creating a circumstance here where there's football managers. I noticed Dyche got asked about a Super League and got asked about Manchester City. Emery got asked about Manchester City in a Super League. We're putting football managers out there to answer questions that don't actually pertain to what happens on the grass. So while Guardiola should do a damn sight better job of answering his questions, I still just feel a little bit like, well, is there any chance of Manchester City putting up someone else for this sort of stuff, please, who can actually answer them in full if we're going to have to go through this charade?
Yeah, I think we can all recount back to that Leeds game in the lockdown season, can't we, whereby Jurgen Klopp became the face of Liverpool's participation in the Super League, and not only had to field questions on that whilst preparing Liverpool for the game, but also had to deal with things like Leeds putting T-shirts in dressing rooms and expecting
chasing the coach and all that nonsense.
Yeah, all that nonsense. Yeah, so I fully take that point. I think it's a good point. I mean, I think it's been interesting how much Vincent Kompany, for example, has had to say on the matter, not himself having to comment on it, but just literally being in a position where he's had to have a say on the matter, because he now works as a manager in English football. So, circumstance has a little bit to do with it in terms of certain people. With regards to Guardiola, I don't think he ever covers himself in any glory when it comes to stuff like this. I think that there is some mitigation and some ways in which you can feel for him, but I think he very much leads the why always us charge. The we are very surprised that this is an investigation that's currently into Manchester City line, and I think I've written a piece today for the Anfield Wrap, and one of the things I've cited in it is the selfie he takes with his staff on the day that the UEFA ban gets rescinded, and he takes a selfie in front of a Sky Sports News screen with all of his staff like it's a trophy parade. And just the lack of awareness around something like that is one thing in itself, but the fact that anyone could see something like that as any way, shape or form of victory for football, and someone so invested in football and someone so in the game as him, it just doesn't make any sense to me. And whilst I'll always have sympathy for the managers being the mouthpieces on things that they don't really know, or well, they probably know a lot more than you or I, but don't really have an opinion they want to share on in front of the public, there's still some ways in which Guardiola, I think, can conduct himself better.
He can conduct himself better, Steve. For me, this whole situation feels almost like a little bit wider. It feels to me like there's football, if it's not careful, yet again, but is perhaps still in the midst of a pretty long ongoing crisis point. And I've written a couple of things this week about how it's unremittingly bleak at the moment. The Manchester City stuff I've just found really miserable. And there's loads of reasons why. I've obviously got, we've got to be clear about this. We've all got dogs in the fight. We've all got skin in the game supporting Liverpool. But it's what you never wanted to have happen anyway. I don't want to relitigate league titles from literally 9 years ago now. It's 9. It was 9 years today. This week, Liverpool put 5 past Arsenal in the 5-1, which made me feel a bit old. It made me feel a bit happy. I was made up. I was there, but I don't want to be relitigating this stuff. Suddenly, the idea of the A22 stuff around the Super League coming back in, the fact that it reminds you that UEFA are a terrible set of lads as well. The whole thing just feels to me, if we're not careful, like we are hitting a bit of a crisis point. And my other concern with that is, are we just turning into old men? I don't think it was better than the old days, far from it. I don't think it was better 9 years ago. And that's part of the problem. It was crap 9 years ago and no one was doing anything about it.
Oh, yeah, I think you're right. We probably all knew less back then as well. There was probably less information out there, on what was going on, which probably helped the matters. Now you've got things like 65,000 news channels on Twitter, all reporting different things, and when Twitter's such a lovely place at the moment as well, as we all know. So it's a pretty bleak outlook. The Man City thing for me, it feels a bit, as you say, we've all got skin in this game more than most, really. So it does feel a bit personal, this one, and it does feel a bit. I could be a bit cheated, really. We've had three occasions where we sat in Anfield on the last day of the season, and where we've lost the league title to them on the last day of the season. Last year being the one that hurt the most, really. And I know, the charges don't sort of apply to last season, but still, they still got to where they are by cooking the books over a certain amount of time. So it just feels like football's a spinning out of control at the moment. So the Super League thing is just wild. I think it's been pushed from obviously the two Spanish sides who see the Premier League as already being a bit of a Super League, as others have said today. The money in the Premier League is ridiculous, and the Spanish clubs aren't happy. You've obviously Juventus, who've been caught out many times, and they're praying for it comes to fruition as well, the Super League. But for me, it's important that everyone just keeps their heads a little bit, and hopefully the right things come about from this investigation. But it's just going to matter of time and whether the Premier League can stick to the guns and have the balls to do so.
Exactly. But I mean, let's be clear about this. There's something in there in the comments as well. And I just want to be quite clear, obviously, that nothing here has been demonstrated finally at this point. Nothing is proven. The investigation isn't over. But the next phase of it has begun, and we get to see where the allegations are. Steve started off there, Mike. He was critical of Twitter. He's obviously not been on one of Cop and Fracas spaces. Absolutely wonderful things, full of kindness, full of generosity of spirit. You've been on them. That's an area where football at least isn't in crisis. But the A22 Super League stuff, as Steve says, for me, what's interesting, going through it, reading it, and if people haven't read it, that's completely understandable. We haven't got time to read PDFs from mad venture capitalists. But for me, it's a document that's positioning itself to try to exist without Premier League involvement, and possibly to an extent exist in opposition to Premier League involvement. And if the Premier League is going to end up being so dominant, it is likely that other leagues and clubs in other leagues are going to look to group together to gang up on it.
Yeah, I think the European Super League does expose this big tension that exists in football between the other top 5 European leagues and the Premier League. And I think a lot of the big teams in those other top five leagues feel threatened by the financial might and power of the Premier League. That's just true. And we now know, based on sort of regulations that were put into place after the initial European Super League was announced, that it will be very difficult for Premier League teams to join a new European Super League. And there is still, I think Mikel Delaney's been really brilliant on this sort of stuff. He wrote that around 50 clubs are still interested in joining a European Super League. None of them are Premier League clubs. So that says there is an appetite and there is this agitation and this tension between these top 5 leagues and the Premier League. And I wonder how that ends, because the Premier League's not going to slow down anytime soon. We're talking about possibly Qatar buying Manchester United, Saudi Arabia own Newcastle at the moment. This is only going to get worse. This tension's only going to grow and grow and grow as we see more money being pumped into the Premier League, and these kind of, even in the mid-table, these sides are getting more powerful. A team like Brighton now, for example, some of the players they can sign, some of the players they have at their disposal. This is something that we haven't seen this before. Brighton have a World Cup winner. They have Matoma. They have Lamptey. These really top players who 10 years ago would have only been players in the top 4 teams in the country. So there is this does pose a threat to those other top 5 leagues in terms of the quality of players we can attract in this league, and the fact that the middle class are doing so well as well. And I wonder where that tension ends.
Yeah, just a comment there. The Wolfman's got Gonards. Don't think he was christened that. Says playing Madrid multiple times a season would be dull. Let me introduce you to Molineux and Wolverhampton Wanderers. At this difficult time, let me introduce you to Wolverhampton Wanderers. Ruben Neves there. Feel as though he lives in ours. There is in amongst all of this, Dan, we do end up getting ourselves just, as I say, I don't want to seem like it's all remarkably bleak, but for me, maybe a better way to frame it is it all just feels remarkably significant. And that is the difference. And listen, things were more significant in 2008 when Manchester City were taken over. Things have been more significant at different periods, I'd argue. More significance would have helped. Again, Antico evening, lads. We'll be bored and playing Madrid every other week. Let me introduce you to Brighton. And there is a thing here where I'm just sick of the significance of everything. And I want to get back to, football is, to quote the wonderful Gianluca Vialli, it's football isn't war, it's a game you play with your mates. Football shouldn't be geopolitics. It's a game you play with your mates. And it feels like everything has this endless, weighty significance on it week after week, press release after press release. And I think everyone just needs a bit of a break from it.
But this has been football's trajectory for 30 years. This has been the Premier League's making. It's been UEFA's making. You talked about the original Super League before. One of the worst, the worst thing to come out of that, rather than its proposal, was that everyone made UEFA the arbiters of good faith.
Yeah, everyone they're great. Them are
thank God for them. Thank God we got them. It's like what? Really? Is that where we are now? But this has been football's doing, its own doing. It's eating itself. And I think, again, if we're looking more, at the macro with this, one of the things I think is we've got to change as base level. And as much as this isn't on people who attend football matches and are invested in football at the very ground level, we have to change attitudes, because our attitude is, this is the only way to win. The race to the bottom is the only way to win. You get rich or you die trying, to quote a very famous album. But it's that concept of the only way to win is to be bankrolled, and we then aspire to that rather than oppose it. And it's about how you get that. It's about how you attain it. It's about how you champion. And in no other, I say this all the time, in no other walk of life would you champion any person being paid £500,000 a week other than in this environment. And we are all made to look divvies from it on a regular basis, because we're all hypocrites, and I get it. But rather than shout from the rooftops and be slightly hypocritical, as we all are, I think we've all got a responsibility to play in this, in terms of how we view football and how we view how you are successful in football and what constitutes success and how you attain it, because that's all to do with all of this. And it is, you've used the word bleak a few times this week, and it's bleak because there's no one really taking responsibility for this. There's no one really grabbing it and saying, well, this is the pathway out of this. This is the pathway to this least resistance. This is how we fix this. So... I want to talk about our manager on this briefly, Steve. This goes back to, what sort of occurred to me today is, and I think pound for pound, over the course of a year, the Liverpool manager faces more questions from journalists than the Prime Minister. Like, genuinely faces more questions from journalists than the Prime Minister when you begin to sort of rethink this and move along it. Today he shut down and he chatted about the Manchester City stuff. Previous week he talked he made a joke about the Chelsea thing, about needing his lawyer. Mm-hmm. He gets himself het up, it's fair to say, in the immediate aftermath of the Wolves game. He's kicking off, unhappy about it. Looks as though certain bits and pieces that are being written without any names being attributed. At times it feels as though that's the case as to what's getting to him. But my point here is, again, these fellas, just to end up where I started, these fellas, it's back to my thing about everything feels too significant. All of them, and this is even when I'll go to bat for Guardiola. Where's Guardiola happiest? Almost certainly when he's trading the players, because that's what he loves. That's what he's got into this for. That's what he wants to do. He wants to play the best possible football. He wants the best possible footballers to do it. That's when he's happiest. He doesn't want to be sat in front of cameras answering a ton of questions. Our fella doesn't want to be doing it either. And it is mad to think that pound for pound, our managers, the managers, answer more questions from the press than the fucking cabinet.
Definitely, and it's a part of the game that's changed so much over the past 10 years. Really, if you look at just how much the media requirements of a manager, do you have especially if you're a manager playing a lot of cup games as well as that. Like, look how many games you played last year. I mean, you can tell Jurgen doesn't enjoy the press conferences. So have to do 60 odd in a year.
Well, 60 pre, and then he's got to do post.
Exactly, yeah. We're driving fucking bananas. And and he gets prickly. We know he does that. And so people will prod him with a stick because he knows he will get a reaction. And it's gonna get clicked. It's gonna sell papers. It's gonna drive drive exposure. It's something, as I said, that just it's such a massive part of the game now. And it's if you're an emotional guy and you're out there to be shot at. When
you want your football managers to be emotional as well, don't you, Steve? You want them to feel it. That's what we want.
But you can't win, can if he's emotional at the press conference, he gets shut down, he gets called a gobshite or whatever. He can't be saying that. I mean, if he's just a robot sitting there like motionless, deadpan, you'd be like, oh Christ, this fella's born life out me here. So you can't win either way, really. You know, the requirements, as I say, he must feel like he does a press conference every other day since he's been here for the last 6 years. It must drive him bananas. And the questions he gets asked about everything going on in the world, if there's something mad in the world, it's not about football, it's about this, it's about that. And he has to give an answer, and it's scrutinised down to the finest T. So it must drive him insane. It certainly will drive me insane, know that.
Mike, he wants to. It's interesting that I think he's in very much protection mode at the moment, around a fair few. Close to him in his team, in the squad as well. I'm intrigued by it. I think he's clearly been implacably furious with his footballers. Implacably furious. We get to see it on the sidelines. He's crystal clear. You know, I like the idea. He went so mad at them after Wolves. He felt he had to give them 2 days off, so everyone didn't have to look at everyone else for a couple of days, which is a level of going mad at people that. I was that livid. That livid. I had to give them a day off. I
can't look at your face anymore. Get out of my sight.
I think it's quite something. But I'm very taken with this, you know, this feeling that he wants to protect as much as possible, because he just doesn't want people being, you know, he wants to take responsibility. This is the thing that I'm sort of taking away from the last couple. He wants him to be responsible. He doesn't want finger pointing elsewhere.
He doesn't, and I think Jordan Henderson's the case study in this press conference where I think he's asked a question about him and he immediately just defends Jordan and just says, look, you know, I'm not answering questions. We don't need to ask questions about Jordan Henderson. And I think that's Jurgen Klopp. Jurgen Klopp is someone who defends his players. He's not
for better or worse, Mike. I hasten to add.
Yeah,
for better or worse.
You know, there are times when perhaps he should just, you know, have a go and just cut loose and just tell them they were all rubbish and Matip, what the hell were you doing for 15 minutes there? And maybe he should, but this is who he is. This is the price of doing business with Jurgen Klopp. He is a man who will defend his players to the very hilt. He's never thrown his players under the bus. You know, in press conferences as well, they are a performance more than anything. And the level of scrutiny he faces and his players face, I think he's just very cautious of that. And he acknowledges that, look, I can make headlines by saying something even tangentially close to criticism of this player. So I'm going to stay clear from any of that and just defend my players. And I think at the moment, they probably need that. I mean, as low as they ever have been under this manager, you know, players like Jordan Henderson, even someone like Van Dijk hasn't performed to the level you'd expect this season. Look, so many of our trusted lieutenants haven't performed to the level that they should have performed this season or expected to perform this season. And I think he just wants to defend them. You know, there are low moments. And I think having a manager back them in the press, no matter what, and fronting up all criticism, that might help them. That might help them kind of get that second wind they need between now and May. But this is Jurgen
now
Klopp,
on Monday, Mike. Now on Monday. Let's not mess about. Let's not have. We'll have another May chat. Monday. All right, listen, that has been part one of your tour live this week. Just a couple of little bits and pieces we'll do it either side of what's coming up. In a second or two, you've got Harry Pryor talking to Mel Lawley and Missy Bow. I'm talking to Gary Judge about the Blues with reference to Monday. But just before then, on Monday, Spine Cop are putting a lot of flags out there as part of getting the atmosphere going as much as we can, getting behind the side and remembering for us, reminding them exactly what they are and what they've achieved recently. So, Paddy, you'll have heard a lot of Anfield Wrap stuff, messaged me today and said, can you please ask people to come over to us in the corner of the Cop underneath the scoreboard anytime, really, before kickoff. There'll be plenty of flags, all different sizes to wave, and we want to encourage as many people to get involved as possible. Try it out for this one if you've been thinking about it. Everyone's so welcome and everyone should come and be part of it. It'll be a good Monday night one all the way through there. So if you want to get down to the corner of the Cop underneath the scoreboards, if you're in the Cop stands pre-match, give everyone a hand, meet some people. And it's a practice run, this one, as well for Real Madrid. Let's be crystal clear about this one. I'm not acting as though the Merseyside derby is the be-all and end-all. There's massive European nights, if Mike Bankole is right, massive European nights to come from a Liverpool point of view. That has been part one of your tour live this week. Coming up now, it's me with Gary Judge. Then it's Harriet with Mel Lawley and with Missy Bow Kearns. And welcome back. It is part 4 of TAW Live. It's seamless if you're on the YouTube and you're enjoying it as live. But if you're not, you've just heard the wonderful Missy Bokearns and Mel Lawley chatting away to Harriet Pryor, which is what all the cool kids do these days. All the cool kids do that. If you want to get free tickets into the game against Leicester coming up, go through the process through the Liverpool website and then put in this code at the very end to have it reduced. It is IWSBBI. You won't believe the amount of time I've tried to turn that into an acronym or, for that matter, an anagram over the course of today. But I have failed miserably. IWSBBI. If you can, I mean, don't do that for me now. It's too late. It's gone. I'm trying to do my own jokes here as we go, and I haven't got a team of script writers working away for me night and day like Dan Morgan's got. I've got to just do it single-handedly and go from there. So if when you go through there, it's IWSBBI. If you want to get some tickets for the women's game up against Leicester, it is a massive game, a massive game. A win there all but secures that Liverpool women will be playing WSL football next season. But almost more importantly, in a sense, it means that the rest of this season can be about planning for next, because it's not about staying up. It's not about survival. It's about Liverpool having the best women's team on the planet. And if that takes 5 years, you've got to start somewhere, and being able to use the next few months in order to be part of that process will be invaluable. It's a massive game Sunday. Hopefully you can get down there. We'll be doing something post-match as well from it. I'm really looking forward to getting myself along. So see you there on Sunday if you're about. IWSBBI in order to get hold of those tickets. Okay, then. It's a massive game Monday as well. Dan Morgan, it's a massive game Monday. There's the press conference. There's all the obvious around fitness. There's all the bits and pieces. For me, watching Everton against Arsenal, for me, looking at the numbers of Everton against Arsenal, looking at the heat maps of Everton against Arsenal, it was like, and I mean this to the credit of the man, it was like watching Sean Dyche's Burnley. The point is Liverpool in the end worked out how to get results against Sean Dyche's Burnley. But the best way to get results against Sean Dyche's Burnley was to be clever. Win your battles and be clever. And what concerns me about Monday night is that this is a Liverpool team that have shown they have the exceptional ability to be stupid in any given moment.
Yeah, especially early on. Yeah, Dyche teams, I mean, remembering back to them now, because we're going to need to, exercise that memory, is that you picked your moments when to go and knew that they would always have a moment as well. And I think Liverpool under Klopp got gradually better at that over the years that he was there. There's the horrible 2-0, isn't there, which is his second game of his first full season.
Yeah, 16-17. It was
16-17. Yeah.
But it was away. It was away.
It was away, but it was one of the ones where you can, in all the ways we've seen results coming this season, you could see one there, and it plays out that day. And he's a manager who's learned from certain experiences, certain teams, certain stadiums, and I think he definitely learned a lot that day in general. But yeah, I mean, they defended in a 4-5-1, attacked in a 4-1-4-1 at times. Had the core push right up, played for the moments in the game. I thought, to be honest with you, if we're doing a little bit on that game, I thought it's one of the first times. I think it's probably the first time this season that Arteta got something majorly wrong. You see that, if we're talking about moments, you see that 45-60 Arsenal are massively on top. And I was just looking at him going, take one of your midfielders off and put Trossard on. They won't be able to deal with 4 forwards. And that is, in many ways, a way of how you deal with the Dyche team, is that you choose your moments when to get on top when you're on top. And then, maybe you can take you can put a midfielder like Jorginho on for one of the forward players, and you play Dyche at his own game in many ways. But they'll be, they'll be, I think they'll be relishing the organisation and the professionalism that he'll bring to them, and I think they'll be willing to run for that. I agree with you. We've got to rely on a Liverpool side that doesn't fundamentally undo itself, and especially in the first 10 minutes of a game. And I think I expect to see something here in terms of what we haven't seen in the past couple of games. I think there's just been a monotony to Brighton and to Wolves, whereby you've just thought this just needs to break. We can do without this again, because you could feel how stale it felt going into those games. But this, I expect a reaction, and I think we'll get one.
Do you think we'll get one, Steve? Are you expecting a reaction? Do you think you will get one? How do you feel this works?
I mean, Christ, we're in trouble if we don't get a reaction to this game. It's. I've been trying to convince myself all week it's the game we need to get us going. A Merseyside derby. No, it's a higher blood and thunder. It's not going to be pretty. It's going to be survival of the fittest out there. But I think that could be something that might just spur us into gear. As Dan said, I think they're going to come with a game plan. They're going to be organised. They're going to just pick their moments off. And as long as we're, if we can just get to 20 minutes, not be too down, I'll be delighted. That it's just that'll be major improvements on the last couple of games anyway, or certainly Wolves. I actually thought there was some green shoots at Wolves. I saw a few things at Wolves that, barring the start, but I thought going forward and a bit in the second half, I thought we showed some good signs that we maybe just taking steps in the right direction. Yeah, we get beat 3-0. It's a disastrous result, but there's certainly things in that game that I thought were working okay. So I'm expecting to bring a couple of wiser heads, a couple of experienced heads and leaders more than anything back into the side. Certainly see Jordan Henderson back in. Wouldn't surprise me to see James Milner as well somewhere, just so someone who could bring a bit of calm to the madness and who's played these games before. And just make sure we're not giving any gifts away in the first 15 minutes if possible. So I think we can do it. I think it'll be. I said it won't be pretty, but I think we can get a result.
The not be pretty part, Mike. I'm all for. Like, if there was a thing I'd like to have, nailed up at the training ground this week, it would be it's absolutely fine to kick for touch. If in doubt, you can just empty it against these. And one of the reasons why is if they're going to be like a Dyche team anyway, they don't want the ball. So if you get the ball 50 yards away from our goal, they'll give it us back pretty quickly. They don't want the ball. There's points where Dyche teams can play, don't get me wrong, and they play in a really compact and smart way. But ultimately, Liverpool playing no-risk football here, I think will at some point find their way through, and then suddenly the football match will become easier for them. But they've got to get through those periods where they will come under genuine sort of threat, whether it's from set pieces or something else.
No, 100%. And I think it goes back to your point of just not being stupid and not being naive. And I think Sean Dyche, more than any other manager, is a manager that's really helped Jurgen Klopp in terms of the question he's posed the manager in some of those games early on. I think the Burnley game you cite and Dan cite was a big one, the 2-0 loss where I think Andre Gray scores a goal. I can't remember who scores the other one, but it was a real low, I think, early on in Jurgen Klopp's time at the club. And since then, we've managed to cope well against Burnley, and we have coped well against low blocks. In the period where we get 90 points back to back, we beat the teams that we should beat, and we beat them quite convincingly as well. So I just think don't do anything stupid. We know that they want set pieces. We know they want to break the game up. We know they want it to be bitty. Don't play into their hands. Be sensible, and it doesn't have to be a beautiful performance. It can be a game where we have to suffer a bit. We have to be patient as fans as well. We have to be patient and trust that they will break Everton down. But it's not going to be a 4-0. I mean, I hope it is, but I don't think it will be a 4-0 where Rigi scores and everyone's having the time of their lives. It's going to be a Monday night slog, and I'm all for it. I don't think that one thing I would say about this group of players is they haven't let us down in the big games this season. I think we can talk about them against the Brightons and Wolves, but in some of the bigger games, I've actually been okay with the performances. Man City was obviously a notable performance. The Arsenal one at 2-2, they're really poor, but before that, it's an okay performance. They do stupid things in that game as well, but it's an okay performance.
They do stupid things in that game, Mike.
They can't help themselves, can they? But like the big games, we've risen to the occasion. I don't see why Monday will be any different. I do feel confident that, especially when the manager spoke about them looking really aggressive and intense in training and training well. That's a good sign. I just think that it's a Monday night under the lights. I don't see why we can't use this game as a springboard. And I've said that a few times this season, but why we can't use this game, a grid win, as a springboard for a strong finish to the season.
Mike, presuming you've got no Van Dijk, who are you picking at centre half?
I'm really reluctant to go Matip and Gomez again. I don't think they help each other at times, those two. I actually think Gomez and Phillips works better because it means Gomez assumes the role of a leader, and he's done well in the past as that leader for us in defence. I remember an FA Cup game where he plays alongside Phillips, if I remember correctly, and Curtis Jones scores a goal, and Gomez did well as the leader of the defensive line that day, and I don't see why he can't do the same on Monday.
Dan, who are you picking at centre half?
I've said all week, I think if you can get Van Dijk on the pitch, it'd not be a kamikaze job in terms of risking him for the next few weeks. I think he'll try. And he's very risk averse in these circumstances, but I think I wouldn't rule him out until you get the team sheet, Virgil, to be honest. But I wouldn't be going there, not Phillips. He's nowhere near it. Sorry.
Okay. Steve, you doing a centre half?
Yeah, I'm a Dan. I've been praying all week. The picture of Van Dijk training, it just doesn't come a little bit too soon for him, but it sounds like it might do from the manager today. I'm going to be open to a little bit of mind games from the manager. It'd be great if it is. because he'll make a massive difference. But if not, I'm with Dan. I don't think he brings Nat Phillips in. I think it's almost hanging him out to dry a little bit if it doesn't go well. So I don't think he will.
We've got to stop this as well. We've got to stop having players, professional fit players who play in those positions and putting other players like 18-year-old kids or talking about putting centre midfielders and centre halves when we've got players there who are in those positions. The players who've been to European Cup finals for Liverpool, the players who've won trophies, we can't start saying all of a sudden that, Fabinho can no longer play in a Liverpool side at the expense of Stefan Bajcetic or Joel Matip. Can't be in a Liverpool 11 because, we need a midfielder there instead in terms of talking about competence. We've got to get out of this. You've got players who've won a lot of things and they've got to front up. They've got to get themselves on the pitch and front up, and Matip especially after last week.
Okay. Dan, who are you doing in the midfield?
I wouldn't be averse at all to seeing Curtis Jones play. I've said this for a while. I think if Thiago's out, I think for me, I know you're going to go round here, Neil, but I think the most important position on the pitch for us is 9, because I think we've got to make Idrissa Gueye look crap because Idrissa Gueye is crap, and I think you can really isolate him. I don't think Anana's that much of a threat unless he can get it to Iwobi. But I think I'd be doing Jones, maybe Henderson in 6, and then I'd be sound with Milner right, to be honest.
Mike, who are you doing?
I would go Henderson, Jones, and Keita. I think we need players that are competent on the ball and are patient and press resistant at times as well, because there will be times when I think Dyche sides do pick their moments, but they do press sometimes, and there will be a plan to press us in particular zones. And I trust Keita and Jones more than any of our midfielders. And I think we do need to get Henderson on the pitch. To go back to your do stupid things point, I think Bajcetic would be a bad choice on a Monday night under the lights in his first derby, because he will probably do something stupid because he's an 18-year-old kid and he's done well for us. But I don't think it'll be the best environment to push him into on a Monday. So I'll go for Henderson, the experience of Henderson, and then the kind of quality on the ball of Jones and Keita.
Okay, Steve, what are you doing?
I think he brings Fabinho back in myself. I think he brings Fabinho back in with Henderson. And if he's fit, that's if he's fit. I didn't know you mentioned it in the press conference today.
No.
But I think, he hasn't been great. We know he hasn't been great, but he's not the only one. And as Dan said, he's not going to get any better by sitting on the bench. What I don't want to see is Fabinho coming on late in the game, because we know as what we've seen so far, that's suicidal. So I think he brings Fabinho and Henderson and one of Jones or Keita on the other side.
Okay, and Dan, who do you want to pick at number 9? What are you looking to do there? You seem very number 9 focused.
I was, and again, just on the Virgil point, I think if he could get Firmino especially on the pitch, he would. I don't think he'd take that chance with Jota from the start, given what happens against City. But yeah, I'd probably go same again. I'd be tempted to switch Nunes and Gakpo, but yeah, go the same personnel.
Same personnel. Mike, what are you doing up top?
I would actually have Gakpo number 9, and I feel sorry for him because we moved him about a few times. But it was weird he started on the left against Wolves, given he had his best game for us against Brighton as the number 9. Like he did some of the stuff that I would have wanted him to do in terms of receiving the ball in a half turn, shifting players, driving with the ball. And I just think those are the sorts of things we might need. Just kind of his drop in and coming to feet and then releasing Darwin and Salah in behind. I think that would be quite useful for us against Everton. And I just think Cody feels the most comfortable there for us at the moment. So why not play him in a position where he's kind of showing some promise?
Steve?
Yeah, the same front three for me. I'm the same. I'd like to see. I think Gakpo's looked certainly the best game he had for us so far was at Brighton away. I think he showed some real promise there. So and that was through the middle. So I'd like to see him through the middle and Nunes on the left and Salah on the right.
Okay. Anyone else do anything wild? Any Milner right back instincts or chat? I wouldn't. I'd be picking Trent all day. No,
Yeah.
shakes of heads. All relatively sensible stuff across the board. But it wouldn't surprise me to see James Milner find his way into the first 11 for this one. Okay, then. Thank you very much indeed. I'm not going to ask you for a prediction because who needs it? Who needs the stress? Do you know what I mean? Why isn't it tonight? They have some of these games on a Friday night. At least they'd be out the way, and your weekend would be the weekends. As it is Monday night. Good God.
But you're not looking at them.
I mean,
once another weekend, they're not looking to cost us some costs.
It's understandable for everyone concerned not to have to look at them, but we will look at them on Friday and on Monday, and hopefully they will not let the side down. It is an absolutely massive Merseyside derby. Download the Anfield Wrap app for more build-up. Check out theanfieldwrap.com/TAW live, not for this show, but for tickets to our North American little shindigs that we've got going on. It is quite the weekend in store, quite the Monday night in store. Merseyside derbies at Anfield. Liverpool have got no option. They've got to do the business at all costs. Thanks to Mike, thanks to Dan.